Alright, just dropped into this abandoned mine. We're actually revisiting this one. This is one of my favorites ever, so I thought we'd come back. Main haulage out of here. See, it's been driven into solid granite. Granite and ice. You can also tell by the spacing of the brow in this tunnel that it was all done with hand steeling. So this was hand driven. You can see this is an older mine. Have an old skip bucket, probably just for bailing water or potentially other things. So yeah, just a little drift, doesn't go anywhere. But it did cut a vein of galena here. As you can see, that gray stuff is galena. So, got maybe 12, 15 pound rail going back in here. So, a lot of airflow. Kind of muddy, difficult to walk. All right. They have an intersection. Rail goes off to the left. See, they added a small section of rail to the interset to stop carts from derailing. We're gonna go to the right first. Show you what's down here. So they definitely hit a vein right here. You can just tell by the structure of the wall, rock. Pulled all the rail from back here, I guess. They drove this thing at a significant grade. Just, I can feel it in here. Old canner or something that's been modified to hang. Maybe they threw their candle butts in there or something. They're stearic acid candles. Yep, this mine is so old. It was likely driven by candlelight, and it was definitely driven by hand drilling. So this is a very unique mine. A lot of times things this old just don't exist anymore because they've caved. A lot of the mining technique that they used back in the 1800s, the late 1800s, is called cut and fill stoping. But it was a method in which it's on straight vertical veins like what we have in most of the area here. They would have to timber above the tunnel, and they would just fill everything above the tunnel with waste rock from the stoping process. And so, you imagine 150 years later when all that timber rots and there's thousands of pounds of material sitting on top of it, it's just gonna fail. So that's why old workings like this are super hard to get into. They're hard to document. So this mine's an incredibly rare exception. So from there, that's where we came in from. We're gonna go straight here now. You can see the vein has become a lot more pronounced in this area. It's still nothing but gouge and manganese oxide really, but that's how a lot of these districts worked, was they would follow the vein for considerable distance, because there generally is a good chance that you will hit a pocket. You'll hit an area where the vein has expanded, so to speak. And usually you get significant mineralization in those areas. It's really hard to walk in here because this is just classic drift mining, where they took out as little as they had to and they followed it all on the vein. In a lot of cases, they don't start by driving tunnels like this. They start with discovery shafts up on the hill, and they locate where exactly ore exists on the vein. So, like for example, right here you can see we're getting into some sulfides, which is a good sign. So yeah, they would here, a handle for something, maybe I would imagine an axe or something. Maybe a pickaxe. But yeah, they would find where they thought there was good minerals, and they'd sink a discovery shaft, and if that panned out, they would drive a tunnel and drift like this, following the vein. And I think in the case of this one, they decided to drift quite extensively along the vein, because they must have thought they would hit some really good stuff. So essentially what they're doing here is they're just driving drift and waiting for an area of swelling in the vein. And they can occur from anywhere between hundreds of feet apart to 30 feet apart in localized zones. So I guess they figured they'd eventually find something worth going after. So we have a drift going to the left here. Doesn't appear to be much, as I sort of backfilled it, gobbed it up. Here we have the remains of a track switch handle. And obviously the track switch is right there, but that would have been the handle for it. So that's kind of cool. I bet you they just transitioned it into a kick switch later on. So we'll continue down this way. The drift got a lot bigger all of a sudden. It's almost 7-8 feet to the back. So here we have an area where it looks like they stoped out a little bit. Like they were starting to find some better stuff back here. This is real old vent line that they would have just used to ventilate as they were driving drift in order to quickly get rid of the fumes from blasting. Oh, all right, so right here we have the sheave wheel. This is a wheel that they would, you see these a lot on head frames and things like that. This is what the cable would wrap around at the very top, and from the hoist and be sent down the shaft attached to whatever it was, like a skip bucket or a cage or anything. So we'll go to the left here. Here's a muck plate. So they would have thrown that at the face, and if they drilled their lifters out correctly, all of everything that they blasted would have been shot onto this muck plate, and then it's super easy to hand muck back out. Right here we have a tank. I kind of think this is a fuel tank. The old one. You see there's a name and it says 1948, 1943. So this mine was worked to up into the 50s, I know that. So right here we have a hoist room. This is what's really spectacular about this mine. That's an 1800s Weber gasoline engine. And it's just directly driving a drum, which acts as the hoist. So this was originally actually steam driven. And you could have bought a conversion kit and converted it, and that's what it looks like they did. So you can see they repurposed some of this vent line that they had before as kind of like a muffler, exhaust type of thing. And yeah, you really don't see really old, this is an old hoist and you don't see them very often, which is what makes this mine really special. It's really cool to see this. You kind of wonder how they would have gotten it in here. It's rather large, obviously in pieces, but. So this is a shaft dewatering bucket, as you can see, has the, has kind of the things running down the side of it there, and the mechanism at the bottom is what would allow them to pull a plunger at the top and release the water. These are super rare, you don't see these often. Try and get a better look at the plunger down below. That's how you can identify them if they have that weird looking plunger at the bottom. It's just like a bathtub plug, and you could pull that up from the top. Another look at the hoist here. So you can see the brake on this side here. This is the brake. And so this wheel right here would have been, this was just the gearing that they had set up. You can see the small gear, the large gear here to run the hoist. And then inside of the drum, there's a clutch so you can control the speed of hoist. And then obviously you have your brake control, and both of those are connected to the left side here. And they run up there, and actually up there, I'll show you in a minute, is where the hoist operator would sit. So it's kind of a funky setup, but it's really cool. So here's the cylinder and piston. See, it's been detached actually from in there. And right over here, right in there, if it'll focus, is just a small brass opening so you could lubricate the drum there. So and then right over here, this is kind of interesting. If you know what that is, that's actually their old hoist system before they ever got anything powered. So this was part of a windlass. And that's just essentially a big hand cranked hoist. And those are, somewhat rare and rather exceptional because they would have been, it would have been difficult to run one, and you could have only done it in a small winds, 30 feet or so. So right over here, you can see this is what used to be the stairs up to this upper platform where the hoist operator would sit. And right here is a old water pitcher, water jug, so they could drink back here. It's kind of cool. And coming over this way, we have, you can kind of see the remains of an old sort of cable homemade ladder. I'm not exactly sure what that was for, where it went, but it's there. And, in the pile of junk down there, there's an ore car wheel, probably spare cable, or a cable for something else. Right over here we have the chute for the system, for the setup. And then, you can see the clutch and brake control. You go right up there to that platform. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Old shovel, some powder boxes, a muck plate down there. This place is really littered with a lot of cool stuff in general. So that's what makes it a good mine. Right over here we have the winds, as you can see. It goes down about 800 feet from my research. And this is where all the airflow goes. So, rather impressive. Make our way over here. So up here you can see what's still in place, a cut and fill stope, what I was talking about earlier. So they have these big, 10, 12 inch stoles, and then they have lagging. And above that lagging is just fill. And there's a good view of it over here. Let's see, you can look back and you can see the fill going all the way up there. And this to the right was a raise. So before you stope, you generally put a raise in so you can access the stope, you can bring material up, etc. This was real tough work to do, but they did it. And part of the reason that they backfilled these was because it provides support to the footwall and hanging wall of the stope, so you don't have a stope failure. So it wasn't because they were just lazy, it was because it kind of helped them in many ways, where they could take less waste material out of the mine, they could stabilize their stopes, and it also make the stope smaller as you go up. It's sort of like a shrinkage stope where you're shrinking the stope as you go up, but it's not a shrinkage stope. But it's sort of, it's that same principle where you're working on top of a pile of material that you've blasted out, essentially. So little sort of winds. It's kind of an underhand stope, but from another level below, so I'm not really going to go over there. It's not very stable. So actually old rope, possibly from the windlass. So we'll come back over to the hoist room here. Another look at the setup from this angle. Fairly cool. And we'll go over here to take a look at the hoist hand controls. There it is. So you can actually see the skip bucket still attached, and the cable runs up to the sheave wheel, And there's actually a hook hanging down where you could, as the bucket came up, you could hook it on the, I believe it would have been the top, and then you could pull the hoist up a little bit and then dump out automatically for you. You can see where the hoist man would sit. It's practically a bench. So, and some odds and ends just sitting up here. Pretty cool. I've never seen a setup quite like this. That's definitely what makes this one of my favorite mines ever. So, okay, we will head back over to the other drift now. Last look at the hoist. All right, to the left here, whole bunch of calcite. So to the right here, I have a ladder, some just random discarded stuff. We'll go check this drift out. Probably doesn't go much of anywhere. Let's see. February 21st, 1941. Looks collapsed right down there. Side of a powder box. Pretty well preserved considering the area that we're in. And that just faces out right down there, I think. Yeah, that's it. This just sort of seems exploratory to me. They probably tried to go over and hit some other vein. Go to the right. Oh, this is interesting. I have a raise and a chute right here. Cool. So right around the corner, it's pretty much collapsed. It's actually somewhat sketchy. That's why I'm not going to go over there. There is stoping above your head, and then there's also stoping below your feet, all of which has been backfilled, timbered, and lagged. So there's nothing really special over there anyway. So I'm just going to save myself the trip down there. But that's pretty much all of this mine. Obviously, there used to be more. I actually believe this mine shot out another side of the mountain before it all caved in. So, somewhat unfortunate. Because, as you can see, this is a very, very cool mine. Probably the oldest hoist you'll see in a mine underground. There are a few out there, but this is one of the more unique ones. It's not really a big hoist, but it's a very unique one. So, all right, well, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.